But today we're going to be talking about guideline number 5 as we wrap up um, these 5 guidelines. And again, all these are important, and if we allow one to be broken, then the newcomer may think, well, will they let another one be broken if they'll let this one? But guideline number 5 reads, offensive language has no place in a Christ-centered recovery group. Any offensive language is inappropriate during sharing. And we just want to be respectful of number one, we're meeting in churches, most of them. Some of them meet in clinics and that kind of deal, but just the very fact that it's a Christ-centered recovery group. Sometimes I know growing up I used curse words as a way to make my point. It made me feel like it's kind of like when someone doesn't, if we're in an argument and I feel like you're not understanding what I'm saying, then I'm just going to speak louder until you really agree with what I'm saying. Just because I'm speaking louder doesn't mean what I'm saying makes any more sense or that you even agree with it. And it's kind of the same way with using foul language. Make my point. Be respectful. I don't have to curse. That being said, in our Christ-centered recovery groups, we do have grace. For the most part, when people come into our groups, they know I'm in a church, I'm in a Christ-centered recovery group, and so they may slip with a curse word, and more often than not, they're catching themselves, and they correct themselves. But as leaders, our main objective is to just keep the group safe again. And if someone is cursing in a group that I'm leading, I'm just going to say, please no bad language. Please watch your language. Just a gentle reminder. And usually you can tell someone that one time and they're fine with it. But the big thing is using the Lord's name in vain. And it's interesting when I think about, because I used to do it myself, and back in my heathen days, when I was pretty far away from the Lord, I'd use the Lord's name in vain, and I'm not proud of that. But it's kind of like being in an argument, or you see an argument going on, and these two people are having an argument, and all of a sudden someone slams you, and you had nothing to do with the conversation. We're going back and forth, and I say, and Rodney's an idiot for telling you that. Well, then I'm standing there going, wait a second, what are you talking about? I'm not even in this conversation, and now you're slamming me. Well, take that scenario and then multiply it by many, many, many. When we use the Lord's name in vain, we feel like we're making a strong statement, but what we're doing in essence is bringing the Lord into a dispute and making him a part of that dispute when he has nothing to do with that. It's not his fault for that dispute. And yet by using his name and misusing his name, we are showing the greatest form of disrespect that we could ever show. And so we don't want to use the Lord's name in vain. And that's mainly what we're talking about in using foul language, as it says, the inappropriate language, offensive language in a share group, open share group on your main meeting night, and then step study group. So we don't want you to use foul language, but specifically we're talking about using the Lord's name in vain. And the scripture's pretty clear about it. Just real quickly, Exodus chapter 20, verse 7 in the NIV and the Celebrate Recovery Bible says, you shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God, for the Lord will not hold anyone guiltless who misuses his name. And then listen to the Message version of that same verse, Exodus 20, verse 7. It says, no using the name of God, your God that loves you, that created you, that is your provider, your strength, your refuge. Don't misuse his name. He's your father. In curses or silly banter. And so often when I look back on my life, I used the Lord's name. It just became silly banter. I felt cool. I felt like I was stronger. I was making a strong point if I threw GD in there or something. And quite frankly, it just made me look like a fool. And so he says, don't use that silly banter. God won't put up with the irreverent use of his name. And then the New Living Translation says, you must not misuse the name of the Lord your God. The Lord will not let you go unpunished if you misuse his name. So he takes it very seriously. We don't want to use his name in vain. And so that's what we're talking about, using the inappropriate or the offensive language in the inappropriate way in the share group. So, but the second part of this this guideline is also to include. It says this also includes information that may be too graphic. If at any time someone starts to get too graphic in their sharing and you feel uncomfortable, please simply raise your hand. They will rephrase their sharing. Do the same for others during your sharing. This encourages respect while not causing someone to stumble with sharing that is offensive or too graphic. If you're unsure or still need to share in more details, save that share for your sponsor or accountability partner. So what would be an example of this? If I'm sharing and I'm talking about, let's say, pornography. I'm wrapped up in pornography and I'm sharing about something that I saw. I don't need to go into detail on what I saw. If I go into detail, our brains are wired, especially guys that have struggled with pornography, they've got images in their head, and you start going into detail some things that you've seen, it'll bring back those images, and you could cause a brother to stumble. And so specifically as a leader, we're going to be watching for that, and we want to kind of nip that in the bud. But we want to make sure that we communicate to our group on the front end, because sometimes they just need to know that they have permission. It doesn't matter if it doesn't offend anybody else. If it's rubbing you the wrong way and causing you to go there and have a trigger, then you need to raise your hand. But we as leaders have to make sure that everyone knows they have permission to do that. And so the way we describe it is, if somebody is sharing and they start getting too graphic, you don't think anybody else is responding in that way, but it's too graphic for you, just simply raise your hand, and that's all you have to say. You don't have to explain or anything. And that way, when I'm sharing, if you raise your hand while I'm sharing, then I don't need to second guess it. I just need to think about what I'm saying and rephrase it. Now someone may say, well, I'm supposed to share this stuff. I've got to get it off my chest. Well, if you feel absolutely the need to share, like it says in that guideline, then take the time and share that with your sponsor or a strong accountability partner that will be able to listen to you without causing someone else to stumble. Because hopefully you've picked a sponsor that is way further down the road than you are and can handle what you're about to share with them. I'll tell you this though, when I've had sponsees, I've always cautioned them to make sure that your sharing doesn't become a bragging time. Sometimes it can be easy to fall into that, with all the women I've been with, or all the things I stole, or whatever the guy is struggling with. It can become a time of bragging, and I think we just have to be real careful of that. That we don't give the enemy glory for that, and when we brag about it, then it can become a sense of bragging. So we just want to be careful not to make it a bragatory type deal. So we want to share it, and we feel the need to share it, but just make sure you do it with a humble spirit. And when I'm with guys that are struggling with needing to share something, if I sense that it's becoming a bragging session, then I'll caution them on it. Make sure. What's your motives in sharing this, and are you doing it because you think it makes you look cool? We want to share it so that we can experience healing that God talks about, Christ talks about, but don't do it so that they think, man, look at all the stuff you did.